Okay, we've already understood the difference between the in-text and end references. So now we are going to learn what is the in-text reference and how do we write it when we are writing our thesis. Now, before we move on, we need to be very clear that we are using the APA referencing style, because in other styles the formatting is little different, but in the APA style what we are going to study, we will be studying about the APA style. So in text referencing, why do we call them in text? Because they are used within the text. That is why they are known as in text referencing. Now, first of all, you need to be clear about a few things. Like, there are different names of people. I've given a few names. For example, Nasir Ali Hassan, Muhammad Usman, Ataur Rahman, Atif Bilal, Shahzeb. These are different names. Now, these names have different number of names. For example, this is the name of one person, but it has three names. Nasir is one name, Ali is second name, and Hassan is the last name. So first name, middle name, and last name. The same way, this person has two names, and this person has two, or you can call three names. Or if we combine this one, it has two names. This person also has two names. Now, in in-text references, you need to be very clear that we only give the last name. For example, if these are the authors of some article or some book, this is going to be the last name which we'll be putting in our references when we'll be using it in our in-text referencing. So these names, the first or the second name, will not be used in in-text referencing. Only the last name will be used. So from here, Hassan will be used, Usman, Atur Rahman, Bilal, and if there's only one name, then you're going to use the same name because this is the first and the last name. Now, why do we give these in-text references? Because we want to tell people that this statement or this text has been said or told by these authors. So by giving these in-text referencing, we mean that this has been derived from these authors' studies. Now, if you look at this, Bilal and Ahmad, suppose their names might be Atif Bilal. We are just giving the Bilal as a reference. And the name of the second author might be Nasir Ahmad, but we are only giving the Ahmad. So by looking at this in-text reference, you can easily know that this is the first author and this is the second author, but they are their last names. Now, what about this 2017? This is a year in which these two authors' paper was published. So how we are writing these in-text referencing is by giving Bilal and Ahmad, comma 2017. Now, what does it show? That Bilal and Ahmad wrote some paper, some article, which was published in 2017. And after reading this paper, I understand that research is a knowledge generating activity. And this is the definition that we got from this paper. This is how you refer your in-text referencing. Now, there are multiple ways to write in-text referencing. First of all, if you look at the first one, we are writing the text first, and then we are giving the reference. If we have to do this, for example, we are writing the text first, that research is a knowledge generating activity. Bilal and Ahmad will come in brackets, small brackets, but Bilal and this and will be used. The symbolic and will be used, Bilal and Ahmad and comma 2017, and the full stop is going to come after these references because you are actually completing your sentence here, not here. This reference is part of the text. This is the first way of writing it. Now, what about the other ways of writing it? Now, keep in mind that we should keep our grammatical things correct while we cite the references. So there's no problem when we write this as the in-text referencing, but now let's look at the other example. If we want to say that according to Bilal and Ahmed, research is a knowledge generating activity. The same thing we can say in this form. How? That now we are using the word according to. The same reference which was cited here will be written like this. So when we'll be writing it like this, according to Bilal and Ahmed, then only the year of publication is going to be in bracket, but the rest of the names, the last name of the first and the second author is going to be outside the bracket, and it is going to be part of your text. That according to Bilal and Ahmed, research is a knowledge generating activity. Now, the difference is that here we were using the brackets, here we are only using the brackets in the year. Second, the big difference is then when we are using the in-text reference within the bracket and at the end of the sentence, we are giving this and. But when we are using it within the text, the part of the sentence, then we will be using this and. Then there might be another way. For example, a study defines research as a knowledge generating activity. Which study? We are just referring it to the study. So the same way you can find the in-text reference here. And then a study by Bilal and Ahmed defines research as a knowledge generating activity. So this is how you can give the in-text referencing. But now there are other things to note. For example, these are the studies with two authors, Bilal and Ahmed. But what about studies with more than two authors? What we are going to do is, we are going to put their names like this. For example, Bilal, Zaib, Ahmed, and Abid. How many authors are there? There are 4 authors. And the paper is published in 2017. What about if there are more than 4, 5, 6 authors? According to Bilal, Zaib, Ahmed, Ali, Khan, Laik, Saad, and Ullah, 2017, research is a knowledge generating activity. Now here, the problem is that too many names create a kind of mess within your text. So the text is shorter than the names of the author, which is why we use another thing which is known as the at all referencing. Now, the first author is Bilal, but there are second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eight authors now. So what you can do is you can just go to this citation of references like Bilal at all. Now, this at all word has some meaning. And why do we put it? It means and others. And others. So what we are trying to say is Bilal and others 2017. So Bilal, Zaib, Ahmed, instead of writing these 8 names, we just write Bilal and others. So the first author's name and others. So this is another way of writing it. We'll have to discuss the rule with which we can use the at all method. So this is also used as one of the ways of writing the in-text referencing. And the same if you want to use within the bracket, now you're going to look at it that it is written like this. If you write it outside the bracket, then it is going to be at all with this dot. Now, this dot is always going to be with at all. As we write, for example, I, with I we write this dot, otherwise it's incomplete. With I we write this dot because otherwise it's incomplete. The same way at all is incomplete without this dot. This is part of it. The other way of writing is research is a knowledge generating activity. Who said it? Bilal and others. Now here you can see that we have given a comma. Why? Because it is in the bracket and now here it is outside the bracket. If you look at the difference here, we were giving a comma here, but we were not giving a comma here. The same way when we are using at all, we are giving the comma when we are using it at the end of the sentence within the bracket, but we are not going to give a comma when we are using it within the part of the sentence and outside the bracket. So this is the at all method that we can use. The same way, it can also be used as Bilal and Ahmed propose that research is a knowledge generating activity. Now, we must understand that for how many people we can use this at all method and for how many people we cannot use this at all method. For that, you need to understand these rules. The first rule is that if there are 1 to 2 authors, if there are 3, 4, 5, or 6 authors, or if there are more than 6 authors. These are the 3 criteria through which we are going to use at all. The second thing that we need to understand is that when are we using this reference in the paper? For example, within the paper, you might cite the same reference once, twice, thrice, or multiple times because you want to support a sentence or an argument. For that, you have to cite the reference maybe for the first time you're writing, maybe you're writing it for the second time, maybe you're writing it for the third time. The second thing that you need to understand is when you are writing it in your paper. Now, the simple rules are that if there are 1 to 2 authors, 1 or 2 authors, first time, second time, and onwards, you will be writing all names, all times, and no use of at all. Now, this means that if a paper or an article or a book has been written by 1 or 2 authors, you will never use at all because you are going to write the names of the both of the authors. Now, if there are 3, 4, 5, or 6 authors of a paper, the first time you are going to use all names. First time you will use all names, but the second time and onwards, when you're using the same paper in the same paper that you're writing or a thesis that you're writing, the second time and onwards you will be using at all. And for the authors of more than 6 members, or for the paper which has more than 6 authors, you are going to use at all the first time, the second time, and all times. So these are the rules related to at all. And just to remind you, what do we mean by at all and others? So these are some of the rules that we use in in-text referencing. Okay, we've already understood the difference between the at all usage at different number of authors, 1 to 2, 3 to 6, and then more than 6 authors. Now, the other thing that we need to understand is that what if the same thing is being said by multiple papers, which means multiple articles. Now, suppose we want to write it in the beginning of the sentence. So Bilal and Ahmed 2017 and Visal and Khan 2020 reported that research is a knowledge generating activity. So when you have to write two papers references in the beginning of the sentence, you are going to separate them with this A and D and. But when you want to write the same thing and you want to say that the multiple papers are saying the same thing and you want to write it at the end, then what you're going to do is burnout can affect performance and increase work withdrawal, turnover intent and turnover, and absenteeism. Now, suppose this sentence or this text has been said by multiple people in their multiple papers. So, how we are going to differentiate them? This is our first author. This is our second paper. This is one paper. Burke and Greenglass 2001 is one paper. This is saying this thing. The other paper, Cuckoo et al., is also saying the same thing, which was published in 2003. Then Hillhouse and Adler 1997 is saying the same thing. And then Jordan and Chenevert 2010 are saying the same thing. Now, the main thing that we need to understand here is how do we make the difference? We are creating the difference by putting this semicolon. So we are separating the papers by putting the semicolons in between two papers. So this means the same thing has been said by one, two, three, and four papers. Now, how do we give the sequence of these papers? Many people misconceive that the order of these papers should be in a chronological order, like 2001 and 1997 should have been at the first. But in APA style, you go with the alphabetical order of the first name, of the last name of the first author. As you can see, that Burke is starting with B. So B is the only alphabet letter in these four papers which is coming in the start. There's no A. If A would have been here, then A would have been cited the first in the first order. So B, and then you will be comparing it with this C, and then you will be comparing it with, for example, this H, and then we get this J. So this is how you give order to your references when you're citing the multiple papers. This is how you separate when you want to write multiple papers in the beginning of the sentence or as part of the sentence. And this is how you separate your papers when you want to write it at the end of the references. So this is all about in-text citation and in-text referencing.